Chris John, Commissioner.
David Scherner, Commissioner.
Sandy Coppin.
Thank you. Okay, adoption of an agenda. I think we all read this prior to the meeting. Can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any question on it? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Then I need a motion for approval of the minutes from the September 11th meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? No discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Open business forum. Skip, we do not have anyone here, so we will not have that this evening. Okay, review of the Greater MSP Initiative. That'd be Skip. Mr. Ninehouse, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Greater MSP Initiative is a public-private partnership. It's been in existence for 3 years now. The purpose of the partnership is to retain and attract businesses to a 16-county region here around the Twin Cities. For the first 3 years of its existence, the City of Burnsville has been a $25,000 contributor. The ask or the contribution is based on the size of the cities. The Greater MSP has done a very good job on both the national level and the international level of marketing the region, and really to a certain extent in the last 3 years has really put the region on the map of national site selectors. So they have done an excellent job there. They have also compiled a number of studies regarding skilled workforce in the region, levels of education, types of companies here. So they've really put together a lot of ammunition that they can utilize. They have also developed a number of very targeted marketing pieces to different segments of the business community that they use as they're out there generating enthusiasm for the region. A little bit of the results so far this year from Greater MSP as it relates to us here in the city of Burnsville. We did receive 15 requests so far for either land or space that could be either purchased and or leased. Typically, when they get these requests, they will send them out to all of the participators around the region, and they'll sometimes tailor them. I mean, if they know that it's just not going to work in a certain area, they won't bother to send us the request. We have responded to 3 of those requests so far this year. The other 12 requests, the reason we did not respond to them is because the requests were for either a larger amount of land or a larger amount of space than we had in Burnsville at the time, and in many cases we probably would never have the amount of space they asked for. Typically, Greater MSP is going to be looking for large types of companies to attract to the region, 50, 100, 150, 200 employees. Of our 2,600 companies in Burnsville, about 70% are 10 employees or less, so the matches, we're not really matching up with their mainstay that they go for. So far this year, there have been no site visits to the city of Burnsville off of those 3 requests. And to date, over the 3-year period of time that the initiative has been in place, there has actually been no business attraction to the city of Burnsville via Greater MSP. One of the things to remember about this effort, though, is there's a significant amount of marketing that's going on. And as I've said, that effort has really put our region on the map as it relates to national site selectors. It's not uncommon the first time that a national site selector comes to this region for them to be surprised at a number of things about the region, and in many cases they will tell us that typically they've not even brought up the Minneapolis-St. Paul area to their clients. So that marketing effort that the Greater MSP is doing is a very valuable effort. If companies are attracted to the region, one of the things to remember is those are potential customers for our businesses here in Burnsville. We have a number of small manufacturing type businesses and supply businesses that is a broader customer base for them. So even if we don't get the company, if we get it in the region, it can be a plus for our company. The other advantage of anything Greater MSP does is obviously the more companies that are attracted to the region, the more opportunities for Burnsville residents for jobs. So we're very comfortable with what's being done by Greater MSP because of those two advantages, even though so far we have not actually been the beneficiary of a new company. And with that, Mr. Chair, if the Commission has any questions or any comments, I would certainly be happy to answer those.
Yes, I do have a question, and that is, when you look at the contribution of Burnsville, is there any way to quantify that? You've indicated on the last statement that there could be, but to date, is there any quantifiable way to understand what benefit Burnsville gets from its $75,000 it's invested?
Commissioner Kleppe, the benefits so far to Burnsville would be the ability of our current companies to have a broader customer base from the companies that have been brought here and or the job opportunities from our residents. Beyond that, no, we can't quantify it because obviously there's been no attraction of a company specifically to the city of Burnsville through these efforts.
A follow-up question?
Certainly.
It was my understanding that the way that the 25,000 was based on population size. Is that correct?
That's correct, Commissioner.
Okay. And how long will this go on forward into the future from a standpoint of that 25,000? Is it for the foreseeable future that every year we would invest 25,000?
Each year we put the $25,000 in our budget, and our budget process starts in June. So each year, council can make the decision to make the contribution or not make the contribution. There's no binding that it has to go for so many years. It's a year by year, like all of our budgetary decisions, it's a year by year decision.
Commissioner Andruski?
I was going to say, can you quantify it to a greater regional perspective in terms of how many companies will come here, and if Lakeville's obtained a company because of this initiative, that would, I think, indirectly benefit Burnsville, because that's the benefit you're talking about, Skip, is the indirect benefit. Correct. Is there a way to quantify? Because I don't think it's a materiality issue, because $25,000 to the city of Burnsville isn't material in nature, but if we can look at a broader quantifiable, measure and say 25 grand isn't material to the budget of Burnsville's, operating budget, I mean, to me, that's the broader picture, because we're probably not going to land a Fortune 500 company. But if we can attract some businesses locally that have 10 employees that are in Lakeville or Burnsville and they stop at the Burnsville Center, I mean, that's what we're looking for here, I think.
Commissioner, we do not have any of those types of figures yet for 2013, but I can tell you that last year there were 31 new companies brought to the region by Greater MSP. I think Apple Valley had one, and I think Egan had one, and I apologize off the top of my head. I can't remember the exact specifics from last year. But there were 31 companies that were brought to the region last year. And to put our $25,000 in perspective, Greater MSP's budget is $4 million a year.
Right.
Question I've got, Mr. Nanos. One of the statements, 2013, Greater MSP began an effort to coordinate retention calls among the many different groups who make these calls. What's the retention call?
A retention call, let me step back, Commissioner. There is a actual process that is used by, for example, the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, and some economic development authorities use it, where it's a very prescribed call on a business with a questionnaire and a lot of questions about, what does the business do, how long have they been in the city, are they going to stay around in the city. We in Burnsville actually do not use that format. We typically go out and visit businesses if they have questions. We visit businesses at Chamber of Commerce events. We do the grand openings and the ribbon cuttings and everything else. One of the things that has been discovered is the Minnesota Chamber does a retention type visit. The business services people from the state of Minnesota do visits on companies. Most cities do some sort of retention visit. Some of the colleges do visits on to different companies for purposes of customized training. Greater MSP undertook an endeavor this year to try and coordinate those visits. And the idea was to make sure that, number one, a specific company wasn't getting overly targeted and having every other month someone wanting to come and talk to them. And number two, doing a cross-check to make sure that we don't have businesses that literally no one is calling. Now, that effort is not going to drill down to a company of 2 or 3 people. Typically, they're looking at focusing on companies of 25 or above. It's quite an endeavor. There is a process that after you make a visit, you can download information into Greater MSP, and they can disseminate that information into all the partners. So it is actually quite an endeavor to assemble information, to make sure that companies are not being overly contacted, and to make sure that there are companies out there that are not being contacted at all.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Skip, just so I understood, is it mostly cities that are contributing dollars, or are counties as well? And
all of the 16 regional counties are asked for contributions. 14 of them are contributors. There are a fair number of cities that also contribute. There's a significant amount of private contribution. Of the $4 million, 80% of it is private contribution. In some cases, some counties contribute and declare that that's the contribution for everyone, including the cities. Here in Dakota County, of the 10 cities, there are 5 of us that are contributors and 5 of us who are not contributors. Interestingly enough, percentage-wise, Dakota County has more cities contributing than any of the other 16 counties.
does Dakota County contribute?
Yes, they do.
Okay. And I only asked the follow-up question, is the $25,000 a minimum, or could the city council choose to contribute more? If there's a more consolidated effort amongst cities in Dakota County, or with Dakota County itself to...
The $25,000 is the ask from Greater MSP
Okay.
based on the number of residents in the city. For example, Dakota County's contribution is $100,000 based on the population of Dakota County.
Has Dakota County budgeted for $100,000 for 2014, to your knowledge at this point? Or?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I do
We
not know.
don't know. Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? This is informational. You're not asking for any motion or anything else at this point.
No need,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we're going open to business results. Skip again.
Open to Business, Mr. Chair and Commissioner, is a new initiative that Dakota County and the cities in Dakota County entered into this year. It is a partnership between the county and the 10 cities in the county. We've engaged a firm by the name of the Metropolitan Consortium of Community Developers. They hired a consultant who specifically concentrates on Dakota County, and her job is to meet with any businesses and our residents and our startup possibilities that need any type of help. The cost for that endeavor is $130,000 a year, of which the Dakota County CDA pays half of that cost, and then the balance is divided amongst the 10 cities. Our contribution from the city of Burnsville was $7,500 this year and would be the same next year. That $7,500 is in our draft budget for next year that will be going to has been going to council and will be voted on by council in December. All of the cities in Dakota County have indicated that their contributions are in their draft budgets for next year, as does the CDA, and I believe the CDA has actually already approved their contribution for next year. I thought it would be interesting through the first 3 quarters of this year to give you the results not only in the county, but then in the city of Burnsville to kind of show you how we line up. So far, the Open to Business consultant has actually had 124 clients, and basically a client is someone that she has spent some time with and worked with. Some of those may cease to be a client because she may help them understand that they probably don't want to open up a business because they don't have a business plan and they have no financial backing or anything like that. So far this year, she's had 14 clients in the city of Burnsville. The types of businesses are possible businesses that she has worked with across the board. startup restaurants, home-based businesses, manufacturing businesses, contractors, virtually any type of business you can think of, she's worked with in the county or here in the city. Primarily with the clients in Burnsville, she's provided them help on their business plans. She's given them some business guidance. She's done some loan facilitations for them, similar to what she's done with other clients across the county. And in a couple of other cities, they do have a program where they can actually give a $1,000 loan to an individual if the individual has personal financial issues that will help them, through that personal financial issue. What I think is very interesting is so far this year, they have loaned $167,000 out to businesses, of which 2 businesses in Burnsville have gotten the lion's share, $140,000 worth of loans. One of our businesses, a longstanding business, got a loan for $35,000 to assist them in an expansion, and another relatively newer business in Burnsville got a $105,000 loan to buy some additional trucks and some staffing for those trucks. There's also been 2 new businesses created so far this year off of those results in Burnsville, and there's been 4 new businesses created within the Dakota County. I think we're going to see the number of new businesses increase as the program goes along. I mean, it's only been obviously up and running for 9 months now, so I think that part we're going to see increase quite a bit as it goes along. There was also, in this effort, a $12,000 loan given to one of our residents who has a business in the Central Corridor in St. Paul. So the program is available to either a business located in the county, a resident of the county, or a business that is going to be moving or starting up their business in the county. So that's why, even though the business was outside of Dakota County, the loan was made. The contracting business that got the $105,000 loan, they have been told that if they meet some parameters on that initial loan, that the Open to Business program would probably be willing to give them additional loans for some additional expansions they'd like to do. They're thinking that this business has the possibility over the next couple of years to add as much as another 40 employees. So they're looking at this one as a possible home run for them. The marketing of this Open to Business program has been strong, and it is continuing. We've marketed in our quarterly Burnsville bulletin. Those of you who drive up and down 35W may occasionally see it in the digital billboard. There's a little ditty about it. The Chamber has done a little bit of marketing of this, and then our staff, as they meet with different businesses, or if we get inquiries for businesses that seem to need help, we're passing this information on to them also. And again, new programs, so the marketing is very, very important. We're very pleased with the results based on the $7,500 that we have contributed. It is in our draft budget, and we're assuming that council will agree to participate again next year. And again, Mr. Chair, if the commissioners have questions or comments, I'd certainly entertain those.
Questions, comments? Question I have, where's the money coming from these loans?
The money comes from, Mr. Chair, a number of grants, and then the interest on the loans that they give out to all the different businesses. Mm-hmm. And then the money for the consultant comes out of that $130,000 contribution. And they are in a number of other cities and a number of other counties. And MCCD has been in existence for about 10 years now. But they have some foundations that are very bullish on business expansion and business startup, and quite frankly, they will do loans that might be a little bit riskier than a bank would take on.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Andrewski?
And just to clarify, I know about a year ago we had a discussion about the city helping in some of the subsidies of these loans. This is not a situation where the city would help with some of the default on potential. Okay.
The only risk to the city of Burnsville is the $7,500.
Okay, yeah.
Any other comments, questions? Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Nienhuis. got you up on the board there again for the review the draft legislative agenda.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Faulkner, who was going to do this presentation, actually went home. She injured her back this morning. Nothing terrible, just a little pain. So I am going to fill in for her. As you know, each year the city and the city council has a draft of their legislative agenda. These are basically items that we want to focus on throughout the next legislative session. By having this agenda, the council has told staff this is the stance that the council is comfortable with. This does allow staff to respond to requests as the legislative session unfolds without needing to come back to council. Obviously, if something comes up that is not on this agenda, that would need council approval. I would draw your attention to the new items that are on this year's legislative agenda, and that are items number 5 through 9. I'll briefly cover kind of what is the idea behind them. Daycare facilities and licensing. What the city is looking for there is we have had some instances, and we, unless the legislation is changed, we can't prevent this, in which a daycare is being run out of a home, but the daycare providers are not living in the home. We have one instance where a daycare provider actually lives across the street, purchased a second home, and is running that daycare out of that home. That does not qualify as a home-based business in our ordinance if you're not living in the home. So basically what is happening there is a standalone business is being conducted in the middle of a residential area. We would be looking to change legislation so that we could deny that happening. Number 6, property maintenance code enforcement. This relates back to our new initiatives that were started this year on property maintenance and rental inspections. What we'd be looking for here is to ask to have the legislators allow cities the ability to basically do fines without and assess fines without having to go through a judicial process. So typically, we're going to tell someone they have to do something. We're going to fine them. They're going to not pay the fine. We're going to go back and forth. We're going to take them to court, and 9 months, a year later, we're going to get a judgment in court that they have to pay the fine. What we're asking for is the ability to just automatically fine them, and you're going to have to, they're going to have to pay the fine based on their failure to comply with maintenance in zoning. We're also asking that if we have to go out and do maintenance work, that we can assess that to the individual and to the property and be able to collect on the work that we've paid for. Number 7, preserve the host community economic development grant program. This is a new program that the 2013 legislature put in effect. It is basically a grant given to cities that have large municipal waste facilities in them, and because of some changes that have occurred by the MPCA, the host fee that we get from our waste facility is less than it used to be. This grant is kind of a way to replace that lost money. And the idea is that if you have a large municipal waste facility in your community, you're taking the garbage from all over the region, that there should be a way for you to capitalize on that. Also, because of some things that have happened, the possibility of redevelopment in the MRQ around our waste facility is going to be longer than it would have in the past. So this kind of replaces some of the lost money we would have from there. The grant amounts to about $480,000 available in the next biennium. And then what we are saying here is we are going to push to have that grant continued beyond the first biennium that it came about. So we'd like to be able to have that grant of $480,000 available to us on a yearly basis to use for development projects. Number 8, basically we're just saying that we are in agreement and we are backing the MPCA's efforts to close the freeway landfill. That's the old landfill that runs right along 35W. That's the landfill area where the old amphitheater a few years back was going to go. That needs to be cleaned up and cleared. We're backing those efforts, and we're encouraging the legislature to push the MPCA to do that cleanup. And then number 9, you're probably all aware there was new legislation to create taxes on goods warehoused. The city is going on record saying we'd like to see that repealed. We obviously have a lot of warehousing operations in the city of Burnsville that are going to be negatively impacted by that. Those are the new ones that are added to the agenda. The other items have been on there in previous years. And again, Mr. Chair, I would certainly try and answer any questions of the commission.
Questions, comments, gentlemen, please?
I do have a question, Mr. Niels. On number 6, the property maintenance code enforcement, I think it's really important for a city to try to maintain the property within the city. Does this have the due process limitations in there for citizens, so there is some way for them to, if they get a fine, to come to administrative, a judge or something, say I shouldn't pay the fine, or is this
Actually,
just
the
that?
process, Commissioner, is we don't issue a fine until you've ignored complaints that you need to make whatever maintenance upgrade or
Right.
whatever is needed. So it's not an automatic, you haven't cut your grass, so we're going to fine you. It's you've ignored our citations, so now you get a fine. So the process that you're asking is, yes, the process exists in that if you correct the violation, the fine never happens. This is for the people who refuse to correct the violation, and then they get the fine.
Don't you have that authority today in the city?
We have the authority to fine, but very often we have no authority to collect without going to court.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Johnson, Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, these are legislative agendas, so they're not actual laws in the legislature right now. We're going through the process right now. These are things we're looking to push towards legislators. Is that correct?
Commissioner. Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner?
How does that happen? Does Burnsville lobby on its own, or is this done through the League of Cities, or what's kind of the primary vehicle to advocate for these changes?
Typically, larger legislative agenda items like this, Commissioner, are usually coming through the league, and then this is giving staff the ability to testify if the league needs someone to testify. Normally, if we want something very specific to the city of Burnsville, then city staff, the mayor, someone like that will do a lobbying effort for that. But typically, we're just going behind the League of Cities efforts and other associated associations.
Has the League of Cities adopted its 2014 legislative priorities to your knowledge, or do you guys interact with the league before working on Burnsville's own? I'm assuming there's subcommittees and groups always working on these issues.
Correct.
These are not all unique to Burnsville, I'm sure.
No, correct, Commissioner. We have various staff that are assigned to different committees through the league, and Councilmember Sherry is also a liaison to the league.
Going back to number 6, it's my understanding that, based on my discussions with some of the members of the city council, that the city's attorney and some of the council members are under the understanding that they can do this locally. They don't need to go to the state legislature to have that enforcement mechanism that you were speaking of earlier. Is that true, or do they still have to have the state legislature determine that the city has the ability to, without going to court, assess some of these fines?
Commissioner, my understanding is the reason this is on the agenda is that we need to take this at a legislative.
So the city attorney must have decided it has to go to the state capitol to have that enforcement.
I was not privy to that conversation, but I would assume so.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you again, Skip. Very well put together. You're still up at bat, and review the MRQ, IUP, and soil remediation.
Do we need to make a recommendation based
Oh,
on
yes,
the
thank you,
proposal?
Commissioner.
I'll move to recommend that the city council adopt the economic development legislative agenda items as presented.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The MRQ, yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you know, we have had a tremendous a number of efforts in the Minnesota River Quadrant. It's been a long-term desire of ours to redevelop down in the quadrant. We thought it might be interesting to share with you some of what's happened in the last year, especially with our soil remediation program. And what I'd like to do is share with you a PowerPoint that actually our Public Works Director, Mr. Steve Albrecht, gave to Council a few weeks ago. And I think you'll be fairly impressed by what's gone on so far. The area we're going to concentrate on is the area you see on your map. We have put heavy emphasis onto the DuPont and Ladybird Circle area with our soil remediation efforts. We also have been working over on the Dworsky properties, which is Park Jeep. I'm going to share with you some parcels that have actually been corrected under the program, some that are not corrected, but we expect that we'll be moving towards correction, and then there's a couple of other projects that I'd like to share with you that I think will be interesting. The process that we're working through is this area down in here. We did a feasibility study last year, and our feasibility study told us that it would cost about $12 million to have all the peat removed from those parcels and good topsoil brought in that you can do development on. The peat will not sustain development. So we're not talking about an area that has contamination. We're just talking about an area that has poor soil, peat-impacted soil. The problem is it's a $12 million correction on $4 million worth of property. So the likelihood of it actually happening is slim. We came up with an idea initially based on the work that's going to be done on County Road 5 and Trunk Highway 13. As you know, 13 is going to be dropped 22 feet, so that's going to result in a lot of excess dirt. That dirt has to go somewhere. And our idea was that that dirt would be the perfect dirt to bring in as the topsoil after this peat has been removed. We're fortunate that at least in a number of the parcels, there's actually a tenant down there that is in the landscaping business. That would be Dale Green, and that company is capable of extracting that peat. And the peat can then be mixed with other soil and actually resold as a profit or reused by the landscaper. What has occurred is that the peat is being removed at virtually no cost to the landowners because the company removing the peat is able to resell it. The soil is being given to the landowners at virtually no cost because when it's being extracted, and the soil that was used this year was actually the soil that came through from the road project onto the new Fairview Ridges campus. So we're now able to basically provide removal of peat at almost no cost, new soil at virtually no cost. We believe that we will probably cut the cost of the remediation of those parcels by at least half, possibly more, over the course of time. We have entered into one interim use permit with the Asselford Company that is allowing them to do the mining of the peat and the stockpiling of dirt for the next 15 years. And the contract calls for 1/15 of their parcels need to be remediated every year. And you'll see very shortly that they're well ahead of that. They have really jumped on the program heavily. This is one of the first parcels that they went through the remediation process. This is about a 9-acre parcel. This gives you an idea of what it looked like before. It is impacted by some power lines, and underneath of all this grass is all this peat that we're talking about. This is what that parcel looks like now. It is all nicely graded out. The new soil is put where we presume a typical building pad would be done. Your parking lot and things like that don't need that new soil put on top of them.
So they're sitting on top of peat then? The parking lot is laying on top
Yes.
of peat? Okay.
Yes, it can. This is the next piece that Asselford had that they also have gone in and done remediation. This is kind of a look of what it looked like prior to the work. Again, you can see a totally ready for developed parcel now. This piece here is a very interesting piece. It's owned by Asselford. Up until about 4 or 5 months ago, it was actually owned by a firm called Nolan Brothers. Nolan Brothers owns this piece here, and they own the parcel directly across the street, which Asselford has bought both of these parcels. The reason Asselford bought both of these parcels is, number one, they have discovered the beauty of this program to get all these parcels ready for development and the ability to sell them to folks for development. We're very pleased because Nolan, in our meetings over the last couple of years, had pretty much told us that they had no desire to do any development down on those two parcels. Matter of fact, we actually went through a process where the city was looking to possibly buy them from them. We could not come up with the price that they needed to sell them for. So the fact that Asselford has picked them up now and is going to remediate the problem is a huge plus. This is what that parcel looked like before. This is what it looks like now. Again, all graded out with a nice pad ready for development. The Dworsky property over here has not been corrected yet, but this area in here is the Jeep dealership, the Jeep Chrysler dealership. This area behind them is vacant property. They actually right now have a track back in there that if you want to test your Jeep before you buy it, you can take it back there and buy. They are applying for an interim use permit. It actually went before Planning Commission last night. Planning Commission is recommending that council approve it, and we're assuming the council will approve the interim use permit next Tuesday at their meeting. That would allow the Dworskys to do the exact same thing. Basically take out all this peat and everything else on their property and get it ready for development. They are also, if you haven't been down past the Chrysler Jeep dealership, they are also right now doing a facade renovation to their new car building. So the new car building is going to look brand new, and then hopefully this area back in here will get all cleaned up. And they are looking at building an office warehouse building back here, and actually will bring in new tenants. This is kind of what it looks like right now, and behind all these trees is where the test track is for the Jeep right now. Asselford owns these two parcels over here. Neither one of them have been corrected yet. They are on the list, and somewhere over the next 15 years will probably be corrected. This is the one parcel. It basically used to be a storage yard, so it is obviously looking kind of run down and certainly could be cleaned up. This other one is very, very interesting. This big mound that you see here is all of the concrete that has come out so far from the 5 and 13 project. And this little gray mound over here is actually all of the concrete that is crushed that has come out of the 5 and 13 project. And this is now will be sold as what is known as Class 5 rock for different projects. We anticipate that once they've completed all of that work for Ames Construction, which is doing the 5 and 13 project, that then they'll move like they have on their other parcels through a remediation of the peat and a grade out of the properties. Another area that Asselford currently owns hasn't been corrected yet, but we are looking to have it corrected. Reason it hasn't been corrected is this is where the landscaping tenant is located, and obviously they're going to move through theirs. They will probably move some operations over to possibly one of the Nolan properties and then correct their property, so it's an ongoing process. This is another landowner down in the area, Robeco. Their commercial name is Landscape Innovations. They are proceeding to do some renovation or some remediation on their own, and they've actually a few years ago done some remediation. This is what the area looks now. If you're traveling south on 35W as you come into Burnsville, this is that mound of black dirt you very often see. We anticipate that somewhere through this process they will also do a remediation of their properties. I actually jumped too fast. Let me go back one. This is what used to be another Nolan Brothers property that Asselfords have just purchased and has gone through the process of getting an interim use permit for that. This is the property. This is the billboard you see as you come into Burnsville that happens to sit on that property. And again, we expect that they will go through the process and remediate this parcel also. Couple of other interesting things that are going on in the MRQ. Over in this yellow area is a company called RDO. This is a picture of RDO's lot. They sell and lease big construction equipment. They have actually been granted a 22-year interim use permit to allow them to continue to have outside storage. The zoning down in the MRQ no longer allows outside storage. The trade-off is they are actually going to renovate their main building and bring it up closer to the MRQ new zoning and material standards. They're going to expand that building. They're also going to remove a couple of buildings, do some nice landscaping and everything else. So the trade-off is they're going to be allowed to stay for another 22 years, but in order to do that, they're going to make their property look much nicer. So when the property across the street from them, all those Asiford properties, when developers start looking at them, they're not looking across the street and saying, well, I can't bring my office warehouse client out here to build a building, because they're not going to want to look at an old-looking development. They are going to clean that up. At the end of the 22 years, they will actually remove all of their buildings and make their property ready for new development to the MRQ zoning standards. Up in this area, we are looking at, in the next couple of years, cleaning up the Cliff Road interchange. There is concerns from MnDOT that more activity down in this area could result in all types of backups onto 35W. So we'll be looking at extending the road and cleaning it up and making for a better intersection there. This is kind of what it looks like right now, and we'll kind of put the road in and everything else. And those are on the plans in the next couple of years to go kind of coincide with all the development that's going on. This piece of property over here, when the 5 and 13 project is done, this will be a vacant parcel. And the city will actually own this vacant parcel. This is kind of what it looks like right now as it's undergoing the construction. I'm going to show you one other parcel. When 5 and 13 is all done at the end of next year, the city will also own this parcel. And it's kind of a picture of what it looks like right now. Dakota County purchased this land for the 5 and 13 project. The reason the city of Burnsville is going to own it is because there's an agreement between the city of Burnsville and Dakota County for the city to do all of the marketing efforts for the development of these two parcels. And the reason for that is Dakota County has said, that's not something we ever do. We don't typically market property. And you guys seem to have an ability to market property, so we'll give it to you, you market it, and then once we sell it, we'll reimburse the county for what they put into it, and any difference is the city's. We believe with the interchange upgrade and everything else, these two parcels should have very good attraction to them. This piece here is a little bit less than an acre. You can obviously envision right at 5 and 13, nice little fast food restaurant in there. Back in here, potentially, you could have a nice office warehouse type building right there at the intersection of 5 and 13.
You put a restaurant and parking in an acre?
A small little drive-through, we probably could, yes, Commissioner. These two little buildings that you just see in the corner of the picture, those are the two United Property buildings that got built about 2 years ago, office warehouse buildings. So we're envisioning another one back here and maybe something similar only on a smaller scale here. So that should be a good project for us once this is all completed next year. The other thing that's going on in the MRQ right now is the city of Burnsville earlier this year purchased some property from Yellow Freight. This is all Yellow Freight right in here. And we are right now in the process of putting a stormwater pond here. Here's a little picture, kind of shows everybody out there working on the pond. The importance of this stormwater pond is that we decided, rather than, throughout this development process, rather than ask all the different developments to put small stormwater ponds on their parcels, let's do one bigger pond that would service everyone. And that allows the various property owners to maximize their parcel for development. And it will be easier to get development in there because you're not going to have to carve a piece off for a pond. We are also going to put a pond up in this area in the future, and those two should be able to handle all the stormwater needs for everything in this area, which again will allow us to maximize the development in the area. This is what that little L-shaped piece looks like right now. It's basically a swale that goes through there. We'll put a complete pond in there. This is very similar to if you look at the heart of the city development, you'll notice that there's that one big pond right off of Nicollet Plaza where the Cub store is. We put that big pond in there, same idea. Let everybody maximize the development on their parcels and have one pond that takes care of all the stormwater needs for the area. We think it's a huge benefit to these landowners down here, should be another reason to help them spur development, should be able for us to get larger development on those parcels, and it gets our ponding in there immediately, and you know the cost of doing it that way is actually much, much cheaper than kind of spreading it all out. That's kind of the update on the MRQ. I would certainly try and answer any questions if anyone has any.
Very well put together. Questions? Commissioner John?
Yeah, the ones you say completed, they're ready today to build on?
Yes.
Wow, that's great. And what type of buildings do you see on those properties right there? Are you looking at warehouses or?
Commissioner, if I could get. Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures, but if you recall the two new United properties, we're thinking similar types of construction in here. One of the things that we're hoping is that the warehouse facilities will have at least 24 feet ceiling clearance. That's kind of the new demand for warehouses. A lot of our warehouse facilities in Burnsville are at 18 feet. So for some uses, we get knocked out of the market, so we're hoping that these developments. Again, these are all privately owned parcels, so it will be private development, and our guidance will be through zoning only. But that's kind of what we're hoping to see in that area.
And what is the zoning there?
In this area right here, we have what is known as GIM zoning. So it's basically a movement from that heavy industrial area that's down there right now to more of a light industrial, no outside storage. So you're going to look at a lot of office warehouse. If it's manufacturing, it's all going to be enclosed. But basically getting away from the outside storage. Get closer to the Savage border, we allow some of that more intense, heavier type industrial usage. And then along 13, it's more of a commercial type zoning.
Very good. Other questions, comments? Excellent. Skip, very well done. Thank you. And I think we got you on deck for a couple more yet. View of the sale of AAA land.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me. The Burnsville EDA owns a parcel in the heart of the city that's about 1.75 acres. That parcel is valued by the county at $457,000. That parcel is part of a larger piece of property that was owned by AAA that the city bought back in 2000. Mediterranean Cruise Cafe, Performing Arts Center, Nicollet Commons Park, excuse me. The parking deck that's out there all sit on parts of that original 6.4 acres. This is the last piece of that. Based on our original purchase in 2000, the value of that 1.7 acres would be $505,000. We did have the parcel appraised last year. It did have an appraisal value of $865,000. A prior developer, Akota Hospitality, excuse me, LLC, also had it appraised last year, and that appraisal was for $737,000. So we do have, obviously, a number of different numbers. Akota Hospitality was going to buy the parcel and develop a hotel. They have decided not to move forward. A new developer has emerged, and they are basically proposing to do the same thing, buy the parcel and build a hotel. So very little has actually changed. To give you an idea, this is the parcel we're talking about. We're still looking at a proposed hotel on it. This is the parking deck that would be right across. This is actually not a street, it's more of a thoroughfare that runs between the two parcels. That would stay there. So this is the area we're talking about, and this is the rest of the excuse me, heart of the city development. The details of the sale of this property, basically very similar to the details a few months ago when we were selling to Akota. We're looking at a $503,000 purchase price. Thank you. Mr. Silky's going to come to my rescue. The developer is going to contribute, excuse me, $28,000 for the construction of 14 stalls that will be owned by the city. And if we go back here, those stalls will be put over here. There are already about a dozen parking stalls right here. So we'll add another 14 over here. The idea is that hopefully employees of the hotel would utilize these stalls. We're not looking for hotel guests to park here and walk way over here to the hotel. So that's kind of why they're looking at some more stalls. Those stalls will remain city-owned, so anybody could park there, but the developer will contribute to those stalls. We are looking at a close on the land deal by July 15th of next year. Now on July 15th, they will be going through their due diligence process, and they are actually doing a feasibility study. By the contract, they will commence construction of the hotel by July 31st of next year, and the hotel will be completed by June 30th of the following year, 2015. The city does have some responsibilities within this purchase and development contract. One of ours is that we will expand the existing parking deck. And let me go back a couple of slides, Commissioners, and I'll show you what we're talking about. This light gray area is the second level of the parking deck out here. The darker kind of gray area, that is actually at grade level. When we originally built this deck, we only did half of the second level, and basically that's what we were able to afford at the time. It was built primarily with the idea of providing the parking for our Performing Arts Center. More than sufficient parking for that. We have always known that this is going to have to be expanded, and we always knew when there was a development here it would have to be expanded. The back side of this parking deck is actually just plain block, and we left it that way because we knew it would have to be expanded. It certainly does not meet any of the heart of the city zoning standards. So as part of the contract, we will expand this deck. We currently have the funds to do a half expansion of the deck. We would utilize TIF funds. We received a grant from the Dakota County CDA earlier this year, and we'll use some of the proceeds from the land sale to do a half expansion. We have also applied to the Met Council for a grant, and if we receive that grant, we'd have enough funds to do a full expansion. And we'll know the details of whether or not we got that grant in December. There is also the possibility, if we don't get the Met Council grant, that you recall we talked about that host community fee or host community grant in our legislative agenda. This is one of the things we could use that money for if we didn't get the Met Council grant. If we get the Met Council grant, then we can use the host community grant for the Cliff Road interchange project that we were looking at when we did the MRQ. So all of this stuff has some connection to it. When we do the expansion, the deck will remain public parking. There will be no stalls in that deck that will be designated hotel parking. Just like when we originally built the deck, we built it with the Performing Arts Center, and it was part of our contract with Mediterranean Cruise Cafe when we sold them that land that we'd have this deck. But everybody knows that nobody gets designated parking. It is all public parking. There are some special assessments on the property that need to be paid. The city would obviously pay those. The hotel developer has not asked for, nor are they getting any public assistance to build this hotel. It's all at their expense. The proposed hotel is a Hilton Garden Inn, which was the same proposal that the other developer had. We're looking at a hotel of about 100 rooms. It will have conference rooms. It will have a restaurant, fitness center, indoor pool, and it will have 55 on-site parking stalls. Again, this allows for maximum use of that parcel for the hotel, and that's why we have the shared parking in the deck that they will utilize. Typically, a 100-room hotel with these kind of amenities, we'd probably be looking at about 187 to 190-something parking stalls in a typical suburban hotel development. But with the shared parking, we can allow them to maximize a smaller site. To put this in perspective, this hotel sits on 1.75 acres. The Best Western Nicollet Inn sits on 7 acres. And Best Western Nicollet is, I believe, 144 rooms. So this one's 100 rooms, so relatively close. But that just gives you an idea of the way we're able to maximize that parcel by having this shared parking. The hotel is consistent with the zoning that exists in the HOC. The hotel has been something that has been a long desired development on that site. We've had RFPs out where we've looked for a hotel. As we talked about, it does allow for maximum usage of the site with the hotel. Shared parking is a goal in Heart of the City. The whole Heart of the City project is based on limited surface parking, limited on-street parking, and shared parking. That's why we have the parking ramp, this parking deck, and we have that one small parking ramp. Staff would recommend that the EDC recommend that the EDA approve this contract. And again, Mr. Chair, I would certainly answer any questions that the Commission may have.
Commissioner?
Skip, and I don't know, there's the parking ramp, or not the parking ramp, there's parking just northeast of the lot that we're talking about. What is that for?
That was my question I was going to ask.
I saw it, I'm looking, I'm like, I have a property in Heart of the City, I don't even remember that. It's the parking that's just
This one up here.
northeast
Right on the corner.
of the,
Of
no,
13 and Nicollet.
move your mouse left, more left,
That
right
one.
there.
Oh, yeah, I'm
What?
sorry.
No,
Yes.
that's okay.
That is that actually used to be a park and ride prior to, you can't, it's not in the picture here, Commissioner, but the MVTA basically sits where the
On the
banner
other
Heart of
side,
City-
yeah, the other side of 13.
That used to be a park and ride.
Okay.
It is privately owned. The unfortunate thing about this parcel is it has a number of MnDOT easements over it, and all of those easements are very restrictive. So basically, the parcel can only be used for highway purposes, which is basically parking. I mean, cars park on there. The family that owns it has actually passed on from one generation to another. Very often has looked to sell it. When we've been marketing our property, very often we're asked, could we buy this property? They could buy this property. The problem is, it is our belief that the process of undoing all of those easements would take a very, very long time.
Which need to happen in order for any city
For anything else to
go
be
through.
done on there. So basically, it's a parking lot that's, for all intents and purposes, really not used at all. The MBTA also has some rights to it where they do some bus training, parking, backing up, and things like that. So the MBTA does use it a little bit.
Can it be leased? Could the Hilton lease the spots so that it could expand parking? Should that be needed? It sounds like it's not going to be needed. It's just that there's a big lot kind of sticking out there.
The property owner has never looked at any type of a leasing type arrangement with anyone, and I'm sure what they're looking at is how would they control that.
It sounds like there's nothing that the city can do to try to facilitate something if should the developer want to pursue that, they would need to really speak to that property owner directly and better understand what the consequences would be of trying to pursue some sort of lease agreement or alternative to a purchase, which given the short timeline of building the hotel, by 15, it wouldn't be able to.
Commissioner, certainly if there was a way that anybody could use this, again, there's a number of complicated various easements that have made this somewhat of a problematic piece of property.
Can we add the easements to the legislative priority list that we just?
I think this is one of those that one of those fights we've decided to stay away from.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Commissioner Pepe, do you have something?
No, I was just kind of a casual.
Okay. Skip, what's the cost of that deck that we're going to put on?
The deck over here?
No, on the left side.
Yeah, if we do the partial expansion, that cost is about 1.3 million. The additional, the grant that we're looking for to do the additional, so we can do the full, is another 990,000. So if we did the complete full expansion, we're looking about 2.1, 2.2 million. The reason the cost is a little bit high is basically this piece of surface parking was just bituminous thrown down there. That needs to actually come out, and then we need to start over and build up from there.
Can you go on top of the existing parking deck? Can you go higher?
I believe structurally and engineeringly we cannot.
So if you don't get the grant for the parking, do you still have enough parking for the hotel, or you need?
We have estimated that with the partial expansion, which is all we're bound to by the contract, the purchase and development contract, that there will be enough parking. One of the things that this whole heart of the city area is basically an urban development, so very similar to a downtown Minneapolis or a downtown St. Paul with shared parking. If every component is running at full capacity, will everybody be able to park within a few feet of where they're going to go? No, they will not. They will have to find a parking somewhere, just like you do in downtown Minneapolis or downtown St. Paul when there's big events going on, and you may have to, walk a little further. But under typical scenarios, we should be okay with parking.
Comment?
No, well,
Okay, you want?
I do have a comment.
Okay.
I just did some quick math on the partial. It seems like, for 42 stalls for 1.3 million, that's like $30,000, almost $31,000 per stall. That's substantially higher than the numbers that I have used in the past for deck parking.
I don't disagree with that, Commissioner.
It's like twice.
I don't disagree with that, Commissioner. As I said, there is some prior work that needs to be done, so we're not talking about just building a parking stall. We've got to clean this all up and go from there.
in other words, the original design wasn't completely done in anticipation of adding.
The original design was done in anticipation of adding it. It's just that this surface parking out here is just bituminous laid down. It was not put in with the idea that it would be the base layer. And then obviously more pillars have to be put in.
Right.
But no, we always knew at some point we would have to expand.
And maybe that was just because when I've looked at parking decks, we're looking at more than 42. So you're not getting much scale. You're having to come in and tear that out, and your scale is very small. Maybe that's why it's so expensive. That is really expensive for per stall.
There is no question, Mr. Commissioner, it is expensive.
Yep.
But are you saying that you're adding 42 on the top? You've got 42 on the bottom, but you just have to rebuild them, so you're getting 84, correct?
If we do half, we'd have approximately an additional 42. If we did a full, we'd have approximately almost 80 more stalls.
Plus the ones underneath.
Plus the ones
That would
underneath,
now
which
be
are there.
cement Instead of bitumen.
Yeah, which are there.
So the math done differently if we get the grant money for the other half to go full. That would reduce the price per stall. So, yeah, depending on how you,
Because you're really rebuilding the bottom ones too,
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
when it's double.
right? So which changes the scale to your
Yeah, would,
point.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have a recommendation, gentlemen, ladies?
I'll move.
I'll second that.
Your motion is to move forward.
Move forward with hotel.
We've got a motion to approve and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Move forward.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And again, the updates you might have, Skip?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I'd like to do is on the activity, the STEM activity for the last couple of months, is just draw your attention to a couple of items. Third paragraph in your report, we were very fortunate. We partnered with the City of Rosemont, the City of Lakeville, and Dakota County, and we hosted one of 5 national site selectors that came to the state of Minnesota back in September. State of Minnesota, through their Positive Minnesota marketing effort, brought these 5 national site selectors in and sent each one to a different region, and we hosted the one that came to the metro region. Basically, we made presentations, took them around, showed them things in the metro area, and then they gave us feedback on pluses and minuses of what they saw. What was interesting, at least I thought it was interesting, is one of the items that a number of the site selectors said they believed was a positive in the state of Minnesota was our infrastructure. And that made me think about what's the infrastructure in other states look like then, considering we're always complaining about the infrastructure. But they actually said our infrastructure is in pretty good shape, and they were very impressed that we were at least attempting to, upgrade and continue to maintain that infrastructure. And they actually said that's one of the things you should push, is that you actually have a good infrastructure. Some of the other things, skilled workforce, good educational facilities, good schools, all of those things, I think, we're pretty comfortable with. The biggest thing that came out of this, and hence good thing that we have greater MSP, is that you guys aren't on the radar as much as you should be for what you have to offer on a national basis. And a number of the 5 site selectors said, prior to coming here for these 2 days, Minnesota, the metropolitan region, really wasn't something I looked hard at for my national clients. I now will put you at least in the mix, so you at least get to go up to the plate and take your at bat. And that's exactly what Greater MSP is attempting to do. The other piece that came out of this, especially in the metro area, was we were encouraged to have a similar marketing approach that everybody in the metropolitan area would use, which is exactly what Greater MSP is attempting to craft for all of us. And they said, you all need to be basically singing the same story when you're talking to various developers. It was a very, very interesting 2 days. The other item that I would draw to your attention is at the bottom of the first page. Every year in the state of Minnesota, we have what is known as Manufacturing Week. We've had a long history here in Burnsville where the city and the chamber have combined to honor our manufacturers. A couple of years ago, we kind of morphed that a little bit into honoring our STEM-based businesses. This year, we decided to try something a little different. It was actually a very good idea that Bill Corby, our chamber president, came up with. And we had a morning event over at the high school. The first hour of the event, Bill Blazer from the Minnesota Chamber came in and addressed our businesses on trends that the Minnesota Chamber is observing and seeing, and trends that he wanted to call to the business community and say, these are things you need to be kind of paying attention to. The second hour of the morning, we had a lady from the Workforce Center come in and address 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students on job interviewing, presentations, future job possibilities. She stressed the idea of having a job pathway, and that maybe you may want to go to a 2-year institution and get into a career and then work on your 4-year degree. She gave them some ideas when you're going out on job interviews, the types of questions you need to ask, and things like that. And then for the final 2 hours, we had a number of our Burnsville STEM businesses and 5 colleges actually have exhibit booths in the gymnasium, and the students were allowed to go in there and go around to the booths, not so much as a hiring fair, but more as a career fair, and they could talk to these businesses and find out what are the kind of people you hire, what would I have to have skill-wise, educationally, and everything else to be able to work in your profession. We had very positive reports from the students. We had very positive reports from the businesses that participated in a career fair. Almost to a 1, every one of those businesses said, you do this again next year, I'd be happy to come back and talk to these students. The businesses told us they were very impressed at the types of questions the students asked, the attention that the students were given, the interest that the students had to have. And I kind of stood back in the gym at one time and just looked all over the gym at what was going on, and what I saw was groups of students at all of these different exhibit booths. What I did not see was groups of students standing in the middle of the gym just chit-chatting with each other because they weren't in class, which I looked at as a very, very, very positive. The city and the chamber with the school district is looking to do this again next year. The school district was very pleased with it, and they told us the student feedback was very, very positive. And then the last thing on the activity report I would just point out is the very last paragraph. We did a couple of weeks ago partner up with Coon Rapids, Chaska, Life Science Alley, State of Minnesota, DEED, and Greater MSP in a booth at the Medical Device and Manufacturing Show. It's a show held every fall here in Minneapolis. They hold 4 shows nationally throughout the year. That show typically has 5,000 plus attendees. They are basically folks engaged in the device manufacturing marketplace, primarily Twin Cities based, but we do get some travel in from other places. And normally there's about 600 exhibitors, again, either suppliers to device manufacturers and or device manufacturers themselves. We've been at the show for probably 4 years now in this type of a partnership. We usually make some very, very good contacts. We also had 3 of our Burnsville businesses that were at this show, and it allowed us to spend some time with the businesses. And quite frankly, without the partnership of the partners involved, this is a very expensive show to exhibit at. The city of Burnsville could not exhibit at this show. So this partnership allows us to exhibit at this show where we normally would not, and it has proven in the past to be a very good contact point for us. And again, Mr. Chair, if there are questions on the activity from the STEM aspect for the last couple of months, I'd be happy to answer
One question I have is Life Science Alley. I probably should know what it is. Where is Life Science Alley?
Life Science Alley is a association of 600 plus firms, entities in primarily in the upper Midwest. Life Science Alley has been in existence for probably 20 to 25 years now. It started out as Medical Alley. Life Science Alley is basically an association of firms and entities engaged in medical device, bioscience. They do a lot of seminars all year long, a lot of informational, and they also, in next week, have their conference coming up where they get folks together for a day and do a lot of training and everything else.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much, Skip. We got your voice going a long time this time.
Yeah, thank you for the rescue with the water.
Hearing nothing else, take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.